Hey, how are you? So today in this video, which is actually an updated video that I did a while ago, we're going to talk about foreclosures. Uh, as soon as people start looking for value, they start talking about foreclosures, but there's important differences in how the foreclosure market operates today, and this video is going to go over some of those differences so that people are aware. So in order to do that, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about, why do people look for foreclosures for value? And that's because a long time ago, or at least a long time ago now, the way foreclosures were done is a lot of times they were advertised in the newspaper, but they weren't on the internet because we weren't doing houses on the internet. And they were just harder to find, and you needed to do more legwork. A lot of times, real estate agents who were just part time, they weren't really looking at the foreclosure market. So a lot of these houses were sold at auction right in front of the steps, so you had to take time out of your day and go to an auction in order to buy them. So that's not really the case anymore. But in the old days, because they were harder to find, you were able to oftentimes get these properties at significant values relative to where they were in the market, and sophisticated buyers could kind of figure out, what they needed to pay in order to buy these properties. So the problem is that when banks were selling properties like this, it also opened up a lot of opportunities for inside dealing and mortgage fraud. And because of that, and with the rise of the internet, they don't sell properties like this anymore. Some big differences in the market now are that in the old days, they could take possession of the property through foreclosure fairly quickly. 3 to 6 months, they could grab it. Now it takes much longer. The statutory hurdles, the way the laws work in the various different states, it takes much longer for them to get a hold of the property in foreclosure. So what they usually do is they pursue other options, the most popular of which is usually the short sale. But when they finally do get the property, okay, they just list it. They list it the same way all the other properties are listed, so everybody sees them. In fact, you actually have to go look to see if it's a foreclosure or not. You actually have to go look that up, but they're just mixed in. And the reason that they're mixed in is because the banks know that that's the fastest way to get a bunch of offers. So what do? They figure out what the market price is, and then they put it on really low. So why do they do that? Well, they do it because they want to make sure that it's competitive. I mean, their goal is to get as many offers as possible. I mean, they'd love to get 20. And the reason that they want to get 20 is because then if the feds get involved and they say, well, you sold this property under market and you must have had a relationship here, and they can say, no, look, we had 20 bids. They can't all be fraud. So now most of the time, I think in this market, they don't get 20, but they get more than two, right? And that's really what they're trying to do. They're trying to get multiple offers. They're trying not to deal with, one or two offers that aren't very good. So they list them low. So you need to know most of these foreclosures, they sell much higher than where they're listed. And it's not possible to get in there and like put in a low offer and then expect the bank to take it right away. The bank just sits on your offer until they have the number of offers that they need to start making a decision. And I think that's the big thing. So it's very common when you make a foreclosure bid today that you have to wait around for 5 to 10 days to see what happens, and sometimes longer. Sometimes it takes longer. The bank is in no hurry to make a decision here. And ultimately, they just sit around until they feel like they've gotten enough offers. So that means that you're going to pay, like every competitive situation, you're going to pay, pretty close to market value for that property. It might be lower than other properties of similar size and age, but it'll probably be lower because the condition is lower. Okay, so you're not really getting a deal. You're paying, if the house had had a regular owner, you're going to pay about what everyone else would pay. So, there's no shortcut today, and the banks know that, which is why they have all adopted this process. Okay, now when they sell houses at foreclosure, they know that they can get pretty close to market value, which is a better deal for them. So they all do it now. I mean, once they figured out the prices were higher doing it this way, then that's what they do. So on the good news, you don't have to pay cash, and you can get the properties inspected. Those are usually not big barriers to the banks saying that they'll do it. I mean, most of the people that are offering cash are offering substantially lower prices, right? And so, the bank might be tempted to do that if that price isn't particularly low. But I think most of the time, the highest prices are by people who are getting mortgages and getting inspections. And just like regular sellers, the banks know that those higher prices are worth the risk of getting those two things done. So they let you do them. So that usually hasn't been a problem. So, but you need to understand that the process is going to be competitive. So, and because it's competitive, I mean, the urban myth is still out there. I know that every foreclosure is an easy way to make money. It's not. It's not anymore. You're going to pay fair value. There's going to be risks in some of these that are going to make it very difficult to make it profitable in the short term. It doesn't mean that they're bad houses. A lot of times they're not bad houses, but you should really just evaluate them the way you would evaluate any other property. So, the properties that have deep risk, I mean, you should do your inspections, right? I mean, if a property needs 30, 40, $50,000 worth of work before you can live there, and you don't have that money, that's probably not a good property for you. That's for an experienced investor, a flipper. A lot of foreclosures end up getting flipped if they're really banged up when they come on the market. I mean, that's who should buy those. So it's there are less opportunities for the real retail investor who doesn't have a ton of cash and doesn't want to do a lot of work. And if the house doesn't need a lot of work, okay, and it doesn't have any inspection issues, it's not going to be any cheaper than any other house that fits that profile. So the banks aren't interested in giving out deals. Okay, I think that's a common myth that the banks can't figure out what the property is worth, and they're just happy to give it away. They're not. They want the max, just like every other seller. And this process is designed to make sure that they capture as much of that as possible. So, I just remind people when they're looking at foreclosures, again, they're really easy to find. If you go to my website, you can actually just do a search for foreclosures. But you should also be looking at short sales and estate sales. A lot of times those properties are almost easier to get a little bit more of an advantage just because of the way those are structured. But I think with the foreclosures, sometimes that can be harder. Okay, so I've reduced my old video down to the new video. Hopefully it was a good one. Remember, you can find foreclosures on my site. If you have a foreclosure that you want to look at, please reach out and let me know. I'll be happy to evaluate it for you and tell you how difficult I think it will be to get. In this market, they are moving quickly, again, because they're generally underpriced. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. If you like the video, make sure you subscribe. I have lots of other house hunting tips coming up as I'm rolling out my new video format. Thanks a lot.